The Vancouver Canucks make more moves after a disappointing blowout versus the Winnipeg Jets, and things continue to get worse for the Canucks as the season rolls on. We're going to break all this down and more later on this episode. Before we get into that, I just want to say that we're so close to 6,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to go and hit that subscribe button. We'll be all season long giving you updates from around the league. But with that, Griffin, let's just hop straight into the first topic today, which is the fact that the Vancouver Canucks make more moves. You can see that they sent multiple players down to the Abbotsford Canucks once again, headlined by Jonathan Lekkerimaki and Max Sasson. You can pause this, you can work your name through. But with this, we see the Canucks still making moves, trying to get an identity, trying to make things work. Seeing some of these players sent down, were you shocked by any of the names?
I was a bit shocked about Lekkerimaki and Sasson, to be honest, just because I think it's only a matter of time before they find themselves back in this lineup. I think it was just to deal with like the daily salary cap. However, the one that I'm really looking at is Guillaume Brisebois being sent down. This was something that I had been petitioning for a little bit, and that with good reason. I think he's been all right, but he hasn't been the jolt that this defense has needed in order to get this defensive core back to what it was last season, and it isn't even a third of what that was now. But with him being sent down, that makes room for one person that I think is for sure going to be coming back in this defensive core. We can get into that in a little bit when we look at the gaps and what the lineup looks like now that Brisebois is sent down. But I think Lekkerimaki and Sasson, it's only a matter of time before they're back in this Canucks lineup. I think for them, it was just a matter of the daily salary cap.
Now, looking at this, with Lekkerimaki, it does seem like he will stay with Abbotsford a bit, but reports are showing that Sasson will be recalled going into the home game tomorrow or today, depending on when you're watching this. But looking at the forward group, they needed to call someone up. So it seems like Sasson will be called back up to play on this fourth line with Bluger and PDG. But looking at the lines, Griffin, things just don't feel the same like they did last season. Obviously, we're without Dakota Joshua, who's still out with an injury. We lost a bit of chemistry between him and Garland, even though Garland looks like the best forward and most consistent forward on this Canucks team. But going into how the Canucks have been playing so far this year, struggling is the biggest word around this team. I mean, looking at the standings, we see them behind Colorado and the Calgary Flames in the final two wildcard spots. The Canucks are only 1 point out from the Calgary Flames, but it's a disappointing season after the magic, the spark, having fans fired up last season where they fought to make it to the second round without Boeser, without Demko, having Arthur Shelovs put them on their back. Looking at this, and I know it's a big question to kind of throw to you, but with the season trending this way, do you think there is a possibility the Canucks could be sellers?
Yeah, it's looking that way. It's unfortunate because we came into this season so high on the moves that we made. We know a few of them haven't worked out. Daniel Sprong, they moved on from him quickly. A lot of other ones haven't worked out, but some definitely have. But this Canucks team isn't even a fraction of what we had expected coming into the season, especially after the season we had last season. We were coming into this season thinking that we had improved in almost every aspect from a roster standpoint. Yeah, the defense had a lot more question than the forwards groups, but we still had enough confidence in this group that they were going to get it going just because of how many career seasons they pulled out of no-name guys last season. So we were hoping that they were going to be able to do that again this season, but it just hasn't worked. And with things not having worked, it's at the point now where they've tried to shuffle this lineup around so many times in every single game. Almost, it seems like we're seeing a new lineup or a new pairing at some point in like amongst the pairings in the lines. But with that, if nothing's working, you have to make a trade at a certain point. I think we're definitely going to be making one. I know everyone's been throwing out J.T. Miller, Elias Pettersson. Can't those guys, as much as there's drama between them right now, I consider them untouchable. We're going to talk on Miller's struggles in a second, but I still have confidence that those guys are going to work it out, whether amongst themselves or within their own personal battles that they're fighting right now to get it going. We saw what Petey was like when Miller wasn't there, and when he is there, hopefully Petey can get back to the way he was playing when Miller wasn't there, despite him being there. But unfortunately, I think Niels Höglander is one of those guys where we've been talking about it all season, and it's unfortunate because of the effort that he's tried to show. He's worked his ass off to stay on this Canucks lineup. just hasn't panned out. I know he scored last game. He was the only bright spot of last game. But again, unless he can continue that, I can see the writing being on the wall for him and at least one or two other defensemen.
And I mean, looking at the team, you might have seen the stat thrown up, but from Jeff Patterson, you've seen since Christmas, the Canucks are 2-4-3. They've been outscored 29-17. The team is averaging 24.3 shots against per game, which is third in the NHL. Team 5-on-5 save percentage is 89.9%, ranked 29th in the NHL, combined with the average of 1.98 goals scored per game, which is the worst in the entire National Hockey League. This is pathetic from a team that we've seen coming into the season, that we felt that could make the push. I don't want to be negative. This is a Canucks team that could get home, go on a heater, take a wildcard spot, take a spot in the standings, make it to the top of the West. But with how this team has been playing, with the system they have been playing in, something has to give at some point. You're seeing elite talent within this lineup, despite all the rumors around Pettersson, Miller. These are top talent guys. These are franchise players. Boeser is a goal scorer. Jake DeBrusk recently acquired. Garland is having a career year. Kiefer Sherwood is looking like a steal of free agency. And this is not even touching on the defense yet, which we will touch on shortly. You have the best defenseman in the entire NHL in Quinn Hughes on the back end, and this team still cannot get it going. Now, going into the JT Miller stuff, we've seen in this blowout game, and yes, like Griffin was saying before the video started, they want to keep their star players out of a blowout game when it's 6-1, which is pitiful after going out and dominating the Toronto Maple Leafs. But looking at JT Miller, he had one of the lowest ice times in the entire game. 6 seconds more than Jonathan Lekkerimaki, who was playing on the fourth line. Talking about that, why put your young, elite, goal-scoring prospect on a fourth-line grinding role? But that's for another video. Looking at JT Miller, one of the lowest ice times among all these players. Only the fourth line played less minutes. You can pause, you can work your way through. It was a pathetic showing. But Miller himself hasn't had that bad of a year. He has 29 points in 33 games. Griffin, I've just been spewing stuff here, looking at this team, looking at everything. Do you think something, anything, a coaching change? I'm not going to say I don't like Rick Tocchet, because I truly do. But does something have to give at some point before the ship completely sinks?
Absolutely. And I know that we're coming off as if the ship is sinking already, just because we're only 1 point out of a wild card spot. I know. But it's not a matter of where we're currently sitting. It's a matter of what we did last year and how, with this much talent involved, like you said, so many guys are studs and having career years. Brock Boeser, Connor Garland, Jake DeBrusk, Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, all these guys. Kiefer Sherwood, the best free agency signing in the NHL this past offseason, and Kevin Lankinen being second best behind that. So with all this talent involved, and Quinn Hughes, the best defenseman in hockey, Filip Hronek, when they're clicking, best defensive pairing in hockey. So with all this in mind, and a Vezina candidate with Thatcher Demko, it is just mind-blowing that we are sitting where we are sitting right now in the standings. And with all those graphics we saw of how bad we have been since Christmas, one of the other things not to forget to mention as well, most overtime losses in the league. And somehow we are 1 point out of a wild card spot. It's just thanks to all those 1 points that we've been getting in those games. But when the New York Islanders, a bottom feeding team like they are just are only a few games off from that, and we are the worst team for overtime, that's saying something in itself. So yeah, something's got to give at some point. A trade, a coaching change maybe. I was talking to somebody even the other day where if you had to pick between Allvin or Rutherford to move on from, who are you moving on from? And we agreed it's Jim Rutherford. So I know everyone loves Trader Jim. There's a lot of things with that. Everyone has their opinion on who they prefer between Allvin and Rutherford. But I think with this, I think it's a case of maybe Rutherford might be a little too old for it, or just has lost his touch and we are in danger of becoming another Jim Benning situation. I know we aren't handing out contracts like they're candy necessarily, but we're still in a situation where a few guys are maybe being overpaid or at risk of being overpaid, or we just haven't found the right roster moves to make to have this thing click. And we've just been making too many roster moves going into this season. Look how many guys we signed and gave up on just like that, and they're not even on the team anymore, or they're just going to another team and doing well. I know Podkolzin, there was a lot of drama there, but look what he's doing in Edmonton right now. And then even in the defensive gap, I know we're probably going to see Eric Branstrom come back soon, but that was another player where the Canucks, they finally got rid of Tucker Pullman, they brought him in, and then they waived him. So there's a lot of things happening to this Canucks team where they're moving too many pieces around. I know a lot of it's to do with the salary cap and a lot of it is to do with injuries, but at a certain point, something has to give, whether it's at a player standpoint or in the management standpoint. I don't think Tocchet necessarily is the problem. Do I want him to play a little bit more offensively at times instead of dump and kill hockey? Absolutely. However, with the pieces that they have right now, we don't have the capable firepower to play shootout hockey like some other teams are playing. So that's just the style the Canucks play physical, and then we play physical very well. So at that point, we have to do something at the top. So I think at a certain point, it becomes a question of Rutherford and Allvin, and which one do you move on from?
And I mean, looking at this, if you're watching this video, you are a fan of the Canucks, and this is passion coming from both of us. You guys watching, what's your thoughts on the current state of the Canucks? Yes, like I said, this team has the talent to go out and win a Stanley Cup. They have elite talent in Pettersson. They have the best defenseman in the NHL. They have a Vezina candidate from last season in Thatcher Demko. A minor trade could change all of this. You go up and pick up one puck-moving defenseman. Maybe the whole season turns around, but what's your guys' thoughts on the current state of the Vancouver Canucks? What's your thoughts on the moves they're making? Just the roster changes? Let us know down in the comments. Are you excited for the next game? And what do you think the record over the next 10 is going to be? Because I'm going to be optimistic. I'll say they'll go out and go 8-2 in the next 10 games. And we'll be looking at this and laughing. What was your guys' thoughts on everything we talked about? Leave a comment below. Way down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back with another episode tomorrow, so keep your eye out for that. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Griffin, and take care.